This is the Voyage Report podcast, where you get the scoop on travel. Now, the editor-in-chief of the Voyage Report, Mark Albert.
Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome. Today, we're going to talk with a couple living what many people would consider to be a dream life. They have no permanent address as they travel the world living the nomadic life on the road. So how do they do it? And what are their tips for you if you want to do the same? Andrew Blackman and his wife, Genie Austin, are joining us today via Skype from Mallorca, Spain. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
So great to have you here, and I have to be honest, there are so many questions that I want to ask you. So let's just start with the three that we ask all of our guests so that our listeners can get some good insight into your travels. What has been your biggest discovery while traveling?
For me, I think the biggest discovery is that it's often not the most spectacular places that I end up loving the most. You know, I often see things online about these things that look at these places that look amazing, these photos that look incredible, and these like UNESCO World Heritage sites that are so famous. But often I find that the places that I actually enjoy spending time in more are a little more out of the way and a little more laid back, and they don't actually have that much to see or that many things that amaze me, but I just enjoy spending time in them. So like a lot of the places in the Balkans, like Belgrade in Serbia was amazing, and it was often places that I don't really expect. And some of the places that are kind of built up a lot, they leave me a bit cold.
Interesting.
Genie,
yeah, and for me, I think that I agree with Andrew. That has also been my experience. But I think the thing that has been the most surprising for me is that I can actually, I feel at home pretty much everywhere that I go. Meaning, one of the concerns that many people have when they have no fixed abode is that they will miss a sense of having their own space with their own things around them. But for me, it's been quite surprising that whatever hotel room I stop in, it's home for me at the time. And I can settle in quite easily and, do all of the things that I would normally do if I were in my own home. And that has been surprising because I thought that it would be much more difficult for me, that I would always have this longing for the last place where I lived. But that hasn't been the case.
That's amazing. So you're very adaptable then.
Apparently, I didn't know this. I really didn't realize that it would be so easy.
Well, that qualifies as a big discovery for sure. So,
It was.
So for each of you, what has been the favorite place you've been to? I'm sure you get this probably more than any other question from family and friends, so you probably have already thought about it.
Yeah, it's tough to pick one out of all the places, but I think for me probably Albania would be my favorite, just because it was it's a place. It's in Europe, but it feels so different from the rest of Europe. There's so many contrasts. There's the capital Tirana is very is quite modern, and it's got skyscrapers and so on. And then you go out into the countryside, and there's people on donkeys, and there's really wild, rugged mountains, and it's just got so many different things. It's got beaches as well. It's got coastline and beautiful Roman ruins. It's got pretty much everything that you would want, and I just had never considered it as a place to visit, really. So that's my favorite one out so far.
Well, I think you're in probably a lot of company. I think a lot of people, when they think of a vacation, they think of Paris or Budapest. They're probably not thinking of Albania. So
it doesn't count very high.
Yeah, no, so that's great to know. Wow, interesting. Jeannie?
And for me, the Balkans, again, as with Andrew, I think my absolute favorite was Serbia, the country Serbia, but particularly the capital Belgrade. And for me, it is the most exciting capital, but maybe it wouldn't be that for many people, but for me, it had such wonderful cafes and so much great art, a lot of innovation there because Serbia is kind of out of, they were kind of portrayed as the bad guys in the war in the Balkans, and of course there's a lot of responsibility to go around in terms of some of the things that occurred in the war. But Belgrade is very, there's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of art. There's a lot of great cafes. There are a lot of people doing interesting things in fashion and in ceramics and so on. And I just found it very vibrant. And because it's not a place that many people visit, there was a freshness to it that you don't get, as you said, when you go to a Paris or one of the more well-known capitals. So I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. She was very hard to leave. Very hard to leave.
In fact, didn't you guys plan to stay maybe just a few days, and you ended up staying for much longer?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a month in the end. We planned to stay for 3 days. And to be honest, when we first saw Belgrade, we thought, oh my God, what are we going to do here for 3 days? It doesn't look great, to be honest. It's got a lot of kind of big, blocky concrete buildings, and there are not a lot of tourist sites. But yeah, we just loved it as soon as we got into what the things that Jeannie mentioned, the cafes, the culture, the art, and it just had this wonderful vibe, and we just ended up staying for a month. And I think the only reason we left in the end was because we had to get through the Balkans before the snow came in the winter.
Because we didn't have we don't have snow tires, so we have to be very careful.
So I had to drag Genie away. It was quite a struggle.
But it sounds like you'll go back.
Yes, we will, absolutely. And I also want to say that I think because the major European destinations are so overexposed, it is hard to have there are no surprises really, or there are very few. You have to go very deep into the countryside to get any surprise from most of the well-known capitals or well-known countries. But the thing with the Balkans is that they're not so overexposed, and places like Albania that Andrew mentioned, and Serbia, and Kosovo, and just so many of them sort of feel very fresh to someone who hasn't been exposed to those cultures. And the people are absolutely wonderful, which was another big draw, I think, for both of us.
And I think maybe it's connected because people don't go there much. I think there was a genuine kind of happiness. A lot of people just seemed, genuinely kind of warm and happy that you're visiting their country and that you're enjoying yourself.
Yes.
And in most places in Europe, you don't get that because they get millions of visitors. They don't really care if you visit. So
actually, sometimes you get the opposite.
Exactly. All these tourists, why don't you just go away? Exactly. So, do you know the next place you're traveling to?
So we're in Mallorca right now, which is an island in the Mediterranean. So we're going to kind of go through a few more of the islands in the Mediterranean. There's Menorca just next to it, and then after that we're going to Corsica and Sardinia.
Yeah.
That's a lot of planning for you guys.
It is. Well, it kind of plans itself for us because they're just these islands kind of dotted through the Mediterranean, so it kind of makes sense to do them. But after that, we're not sure. Generally, you're right. We don't plan too far ahead.
Right. The other islands are in the neighborhood.
Right. Yes. Exactly. Whenever we plan, the problem is whenever we plan, it always changes. So we've given up on that because, we kind of like to respond to where we are. So that makes planning hard because if we're in a place that we really are enjoying and like, we stay longer. And if we don't enjoy it or it's not so interesting for us, we move on. So that can kind of make it hard to plan.
Yeah, and then we have to find our way around things like holidays and like places that get very busy in summer. We have to avoid those, and then places that get very cold in winter we have to avoid those. And we
don't have to, but we
choose to. Yeah, so we end up having to adjust quite a bit.
Well, I lived in Minneapolis for 8 winters, as I like to describe it. And that was after 4 winters in West Michigan, with which any listener might know gets lake effect snow. So you get about 120, 130 inches a winter. And I had, at the time, a Camaro with about a 6-inch clearance on the bottom. So I totally respect your decision to not deal with the snow. I totally understand. So how did this all get started? You guys just decided to pick up and leave one day? I mean, how did this get going, this adventure of yours?
It was kind of like that, but it started. It was much more gradual process. In the initial phase, we'd had this dream for a long time. From even before we met back in 2000 in New York, and even then we'd already had this same sort of dream separately that we just wanted to travel the world and work as we went. And at the time, it was quite difficult to do that because the internet didn't offer the same opportunities that it does today for working and making money. So I had a book about working your way around the world, and it talked about things like picking grapes and working in bars and how to get a visa to do all these kind of jobs, English teachers or whatever, things that were in each place. And so I'd sort of thought about going around and just making money as I went, and it never quite happened. And Jeannie you'd had the same.
Yeah, I'm from Barbados, and I spent, most of all of my life really as a child and a young adult. We had a house that, where you could see the ocean. So the horizon was always a fascinating presence in my life, and I would see ships come in and ships go in, and so from a very early age, I was always curious about the life that went on beyond the horizon. And so I think that traveling really, kind of going to that horizon and beyond and finding out how people lived beyond it was definitely part of who I was growing up. And my mother worked in tourism. My father, he worked for FIFA, and he traveled a lot with that job. So I think it sort of was natural that, for me, that I would be traveling as an adult. But as Andrew said, it was is quite a difficult thing to bring about in terms of long-term traveling, beyond the vacation and so on. And I think the internet really opened up an opportunity for both of us to make our long-held dream a reality.
It makes it so much easier to plan or to do research or whatnot and try to prepare yourself. So I have to ask just the practical questions. I mean, how does this all work? Did you sell everything? Did you? I think it sounds like you kept your car if you don't have snow tires and all that. But how does that work in practice? I mean, did you just say, okay, we're going on eBay, we're having a garage sale today, and we're getting rid of everything?
Yeah, pretty much. We just put everything on eBay really, and to be honest, we'd kind of we met, as I said, in New York, and after that we moved to London, and we lived there for quite a few years. And with each kind of move, we shed some of our stuff, so we didn't have a whole lot to begin with. I think it would be more difficult. I think for a lot of people. I think we've never been that settled. No. We've always done kind of different jobs. Go ahead.
Yeah, I moved from Barbados to France for 2 years, to New York, to London. Then we went back to Barbados for 1 year. Then we moved to Crete in Greece. So, and Andrew was from London to New York to Barbados, to Barbados and Crete. So we've been moving quite a bit before we actually launched
started
into
permanently
this.
Moving.
That's right.
But then just when you're living in a car, there's really even less stuff you can have. So we just sold off all of our remaining things, and
we bought a car because we didn't have one before.
So that selling off our stuff kind of helped to raise some money, and we had a little bit of savings, not very much. So we managed to get a car, and then we'd kind of been building up our freelance income for a few years to try and to get to the point where we could do it sustainably, because we didn't really have any savings, so we couldn't just kind of take off and travel. We knew we'd have to work as we went, and Jeannie wasn't up for picking grapes, so so we had to find a way to do it using the internet. So we found, I've done journalism, and so I do a lot of writing and some editing as well. I picked up some editing work with a company in Australia called Envato, and Jeannie does photography teaching and writing, and we kind of cobbled together a lot of different forms of income, and I've written a couple of books as well that don't make a whole lot of money, but something. So we kind of cobbled together an income from lots of different sources, and then we got to the point where we realized, we can actually live if we keep it fairly cheap. We don't have a luxurious vacation style life most of the time, but we do okay.
So you're not staying in the Ritz-Carlton everywhere you go?
No, not for now. Not for now. But,
that would be nice. Maybe that will be a future goal.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's how I found both of you, was through Andrew's writing. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal last month in March 26th, and the headline is, "In Praise of a Nomadic Life. We've given up a lot for a life of working and living on the road, but we wouldn't want it any other way." And so let me ask you, do you have any regrets? It doesn't sound like it.
No, none. If I do have a regret, it's that we didn't do it sooner. That really would be it, because it actually has worked out very well, beyond our expectations, I would say, because when you kind of just launch out into this sort of life. You don't know what the challenges will be until you're actually in it. But it has been quite easy. I mean, there are challenges, obviously, like any other life, there are challenges, but it's worked out extremely well.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't. That is a slight regret, though, is that we didn't do it earlier, because I think it is different when you're younger. You can travel in a different way. Like I remember when I was 18 or 19, I went backpacking around Peru, and it was you just have so much more energy then, and you're also open to many more things that now, as I'm 40 years old now, and now I think back and I think, oh my God, I would never do that. Some of the places I stayed in, and some of the foods I ate, and some of the, I went walking up in the mountains one day with no plan, and it just things that were just really bad ideas. But I think it's kind of good to do it sometimes when you're young, as long as you have a little bit of luck on your side, you can kind of have more some more intense experiences. Whereas now I think we're a bit more cautious. We're still not that cautious, but we're a little older and more sensible, I guess. So yeah, it would have been nice to do it when we're younger.
Right. So it sounds like you have set some limits. I mean, you're not staying in hostels or camping or anything like that.
No, generally we stay in hotels, sometimes Airbnb apartments, and mostly kind of night. We use like Booking.com mostly just to find hotels, and our general budget is $50 a night. So they're not like luxury.
Euros.
Yeah, 50 euros, which is roughly $50 a bit more. So they're not like luxurious places or anything, but they're usually nice. We can, especially because we often don't go to the peak. The main tourist places in peak season. We tend to, go to the popular places slightly off season, and then go to somewhere in Eastern Europe or somewhere in the summer, which is not so popular. And then so we could get decent places. Yeah. We don't really do youth hostels unless we're really desperate.
No, we've only done that once,
twice,
I think.
And in a private room, not in a dormitory.
Yeah. I think we did it in France and in, Estonia, but as Andrew said, it was in private room. And we do have, we sort of have some basic requirements for the places that we stay in. And a lot of that is also because we need to work. So the place we stay in needs to have a very good Wi-Fi, and it needs to have parking because, all our stuff is in our car. So we want to make sure that our car is in a safe place. And so there are some basic things. And of course, it depends on where we're staying. We can, when we were in Morocco recently, we were able to stay in quite lovely places because the cost of living there is lower. But for instance, when we were in Scandinavia last year, we couldn't, I think we only stayed in a hotel once. Most of the time we had to do Airbnb, usually a private room in someone's home, because that was what we could afford. And that actually turned out to be a very good experience. It was the first time we done Airbnb Airbnb we've done before, but usually we rent the entire space. But in Scandinavia, we did a lot of private rooms in people's homes, and that worked out really well because we got to meet a lot of wonderful people. So we would probably do that again.
Yeah.
Yeah, Airbnb has certainly changed up lodging around the world. And just a quick word on hostels. I did stay in one in Israel, Tel Aviv, and Jerusalem, and then they were very, very good in Japan, actually. Again, a private room, so it's an in-suite. And if our listeners want to learn more, I've listed the exact hostels on voyagereport.com under those destinations. And also on our website, speaking about the euro, we published an article a couple of weeks ago about how the euro is almost at parity with the dollar. Some experts think that it will be. So certainly if you're an American or paying in another currency, it's sort of like Europe is on sale. I mean, it's kind of like 10, 15, 20% off. So has that been a help to you guys?
It has actually, because we earn a lot of our money in dollars because we do business. So that we do work for kind of international clients, like you mentioned the Wall Street Journal, and often even the company I work for in Australia, they pay me in US dollars. It's kind of like an international thing. So yes, it's helped a lot.
Now, neither of you have kids. Does that make this kind of life easier? Do you think that families with kids could still do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they could still do it, but I think it would have a lot more challenges that we probably don't know much about because we don't have kids, and but I think there are people who do it. I think there are various blogs about the people have done from sort of traveling with children and families who travel, but I think it must be very hard because we often find it difficult, just the day-to-day things of not quite knowing where you're going to be and getting the balance right between working and not working and having enough free time. And I think if you had children as well to think about, I guess you'd have to homeschool them while you're traveling, and that would take time as well. And how do you balance that with your work, and how do you make sure that they're, because kids often like a certain amount of routine and stability. I think it would be a lot to do, but certainly people do it. So I don't. When we tell people what we're doing, often their reaction is, "Oh, well, I could never do that because I have kids." So it's a non-starter for me. But I don't think that's true.
No, I've seen a lot of blogs actually with people with kids who are doing it.
A lot of
kids
people.
A lot of people, and kids of a variety of ages as well, from babies to teenagers. I've seen the whole range. So it's definitely possible.
Now, you mentioned that perhaps your only regret would be that you didn't start doing this sooner. But I wonder if there have been things that you had to sacrifice doing this kind of a life.
Yeah.
There are, and it's. I mean, one of the things is the sort of family life that we mentioned. We didn't really want to have kids anyway. It was a sort of choice that we made for various reasons. But I think part of it was because we always had this dream of travel, and we just thought it would be difficult with a child, and we weren't sure if it would really be a wise thing to do, or maybe fair on the child. But and
also our creativity. We're both pretty creative people, so we were much more interested in putting energy into that.
But certainly when you're traveling all the time, you are away from family or away from friends, and we are kind of aware each time we go back, in my case to London, to my family and Genie in Barbados, that everyone's getting older, they've had experiences and you weren't there, and it is something that you miss out on, and you miss out on kind of a sense of belonging, I guess, in one place, because we're always moving. We're not part of anything. We don't have a community of regular people that we see, or favorite places that we go, or just the day-to-day things that you see when you're living in one place. Like in New York, we had our neighborhood bagel shop and our neighborhood things, and things that are kind of familiar, and we could do classes or whatever you want. And there are some sacrifices. I mean, for me, they're definitely worth it. But
and I think, for instance, with I think it does change your social experience for sure, and that is a lot to give up. Because even before we started on this sort of life on the road, we've lived in different places, and each place we've lived for a while. So we make friends, and then we leave, and we miss out on a large part of their lives as well. I mean, up until actually a few years ago, I'd never attended a wedding, even though I have friends everywhere.
Wow.
I'd never attended a wedding because people get married, and I wasn't there, couldn't make it back. And people have children. People's lives they move on, and they move on without you. And that has been a huge loss and very difficult to deal with. Because of modern technology, it is a little bit easier to keep connected. We have a few friends that we Skype, now and again, but it isn't the same thing as being there, is it? For the small and big moments of their lives.
Right. Would either of you have done this life if you weren't with the other? Would you have done it alone?
Yeah, I think so, because the dream was definitely there before we met each other. But I do think that doing it together has made it a lot easier. For one, when I was talking to you before about the fact that I feel at home, I feel as though I can be at home no matter what space I'm in. Mm-hmm. It occurred to me, and I didn't say it, but I'm saying it now, that part of what makes that much more easy to do is the fact that I have Andrew, because I think that my home is with him. And of course, that would have to change if we weren't together. But at this point in my life, the fact that we're together, wherever he is, wherever I am, I think that we sort of create a space that is home for us. But I do think that we would have found a way to do it if we weren't together as well.
Yeah, I think definitely I would have done it if I was single. I think that what would be hard is if you got together with someone who didn't want to do it. I think that would be a tough thing to do. There'd be a lot of conflict. There was after my Wall Street Journal article, I had a reader email me. Actually, she emailed me and said that her daughter had just taken off to travel around the world, and she'd left behind her home, her husband, and her job, which is a lot to give up.
Yeah.
It's a lot, and she's living in Southeast Asia, and she's very happy apparently. But that's a lot to give up, and I think it would be very difficult if you had to do that, or if you had some kind of conflict. But yeah, I think Jeannie's right. It makes it a lot easier when you're traveling with someone that you love and someone that gives you that sense of, a familiarity with a companionship. And it could be quite lonely, I think, if it was just you. And I'm not that outgoing or good at making conversation with strangers, and I think I might struggle going around the world, trying to make friends as I go. I think I might feel a bit lonely sometimes, and I think traveling around with a companion, whether that's your partner or a friend or whoever, I think it definitely makes it easier.
Now, Andrew, you're a journalist. Jeannie, you're a teacher and a photographer. In fact, you have an Instagram account here, which I just love. When I look at it, I feel like I'm watching the National Geographic magazine or the National Geographic channel. I mean, it is just really amazing with these striking images. Camels in the Sahara. You've got these wonderful village shots, these people and their faces. What inspires you to take these photographs? Why did you start doing this?
Well, again, I think that photography for me it sort of went hand in hand with the idea of traveling when I was younger again, because I remember my mother, I was having quite a bit of a hard time deciding what I wanted to do in my life. And my mother told me, write down all the things you like and write down all the things you'd like to learn. And maybe you can come up with some kind of profession, So I from a very early age, I thought writing and photography would go great with traveling. And so I've been, honing my skills. I went to art school actually right after Andrew and I met. I was going into art school in New York City, and I studied photography and video and so on there. And but I do think that traveling photography does help me to process the experiences that I have when I travel. And for me, I'm very interested in history and in politics and in sociology, really, how people live. So my photography tends to focus, I do take, the iconic shots of very, places that we all know and love, places that are always photographed. But I'm more interested in the day-to-day lives of people, how they live, what are the things that they struggle with. And so my photography tends to reflect that. And I tend to write a lot as well, too, my thoughts about a place. Or, one of the things that Andrew and I have begun to do is that we make a point of looking for human rights activists or teachers or journalists in places that we travel to. And we sit down and have a conversation with them and try to find out a little bit more about the place that we're in. And that has given us a lot of insight into some of the social, political, economic problems that people face. And so I try to reflect that in my photography, because for me, it's also a way of moving a little deeper into a place, not just enjoying the sweet on the surface, but also exploring a little bit of the challenges as well.
Listeners, if you're wondering, her Instagram account is Photodisiac, FOTODISIAC, FOTODISIAC. And I love in your profile here, Jeannie, it says, slow traveling through Europe, 2015 to 2000, ? I love that.
Thank you. We are moving, but we're actually moving a lot more slowly than we thought. But
we thought, what did we think originally, 2 years or something?
Yeah, we thought 2 years.
And it's been more than 2 years already, and we've got so much left to do. It's just getting slower and slower.
Well, let me ask you then. You say you have so much more to do. What do you have to do? I mean, do you have an informal list of countries or regions you want to go to?
The world.
Oh.
Yeah, the world. But for now, really, we haven't made a formal list, but we know we are trying to explore all of Europe. There's a project that I'm interested in doing, and I haven't completely conceived it yet, so I won't talk about it. But we are interested in European identity, like what makes a person a European. Obviously, it's a lot more challenging than saying the American identity, because you are one country with several states, but you're one country with quite a consolidated sense of who you are. Whereas Europe, in terms of the EU anyway, is just beginning to explore that idea. So I think that for me personally, one of my goals is to explore all of the countries that make up not just the EU, but the geographic boundaries of what is considered to be Europe, and sort of question the idea of what makes a person European. What does that identity mean? So we don't have a list as such, but I don't have a list as such, but we know how many countries make up Europe. So that's at least the beginning.
Yeah, and then from there we plan to expand into other continents, and we haven't quite decided the order, but yeah, see as much as we can.
So can we keep posted on your journey through your Instagram account when your project goes public? Where should we find it?
Well,
yeah,
I think my Instagram is right now the Instagram account is probably the best place for me. But Andrew has a website.
Yeah, I don't post as regularly as Genie does on her Instagram, but yeah, I have a website and post kind of general updates on there. Just andrewblackman.net.
andrewblackman.net, fantastic. And so let's give some tips for listeners here. First of all, what are your tips for other couples or families or even single people who want to do what you're doing and simply go on the road, make a living of it, make a go of it? What would you suggest that they do? How should they approach it?
I think obviously money is a big thing to approach first. Like how are you actually going to deal with that? That's the number one. And the interesting thing is there's so many ways to do it. Like we've done it through freelance work, and I think a lot of people can do that as well, because there are so many opportunities now for writers, editors, photographers, designers, computer programmers. Lots of people can make money through freelance work that they can find online. And so I think think about what skills you have and what whether they're transferable to a job that you could do anywhere, and then gradually start to build that up. But we also met people.
Yeah, we met a couple in Greece actually a few years ago, and they're an Australian couple, and what they had done was they rented their house in Australia, and that was financing their traveling.
Clever.
So, and I also have another couple. They're friends actually from Instagram that I met via Instagram, and they're private chefs. So they go back they're from the United States, and they go back to the United States for a few months every year, and they work and earn enough to finance their traveling for the rest of the year. So they've been coming since I've known them, which is actually over the last 2 years. They've been, they come and they go in terms of they come back, go back to the United States, work for a few months, accumulate enough money, and then they travel. And yeah,
so there are lots of different ways to do it. I think it's just a question of figuring out, what is your way? How are you gonna pay for it? Because it's nice to do it if you can do it in a way that is sustainable. That you're not having this kind of another way obviously is to save up a bunch of money and then go. But then you've always got that thing of the money is always dwindling away, and you've got this kind of clock ticking. It's nice if you can figure out a way to do it that you can just do it for as long as you like.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And what would you say would be your top tips for the infrequent traveler? I found, and one of the reasons we started VoyageReport.com is because I found that a lot of people think travel is just too expensive, too intimidating, too frustrating, too out of reach. They don't even know where to begin. And so I'm curious, for those people who may only take one trip a year, maybe they take 2 trips a year, what are your general travel tips for people that they can take with them?
I think the number one thing I would suggest is definitely, obviously people do their research beforehand, and that's fine. Definitely hit all of the major sites that you want to see, but leave some time to just explore the less known sites of a country, the less known spaces, really. Talk to people, because one of the things that I find completely amazing about traveling is that people are always willing to talk. They're always, if you're curious about a person's country, they're always willing to talk to you, to give you tips. And one of the things I find is helpful is when you ask someone what's a good, if you want to find a great place to eat, never ask them what's a great place to eat, but ask them, where do you eat? Because what I've discovered is when you ask people what's a great place to eat, they'll tell you the place that they think a tourist would want to go. But when you ask them where they eat, it's often a different place. It's not the place where the tourists go, but it's something, very personal to them or to where all the local people hang out. So I do think that traveling can seem very intimidating, but I also think that at the end of the day, at least it's been my experience, that really we're all just people. And that's what you discover once you begin to travel. And I think taking time to have some of the more ordinary experiences, just walking around, going to places that are off the tourist track, but they're the ones that tend to yield a lot of lasting memories.
Yeah, and going back to what you said about sort of people don't think they can afford it or they can go to certain places. I think it's interesting that you can often find sort of little places, even if you go slightly out of town or go to as you mentioned, a hostel or a sort of cheaper hotel or Airbnb, or we've even done couch surfing in the past where that was some great experiences where you stay for free, but you just kind of give people help with the meals or whatever. There are lots of different ways to travel, and you don't have to do it the expensive way or the kind of the way that everybody does. I mean, as an example, Genie's from Barbados, and is a very expensive destination for most people if you go with those kind of packages in the big fancy hotels, and it could be thousands and thousands, but there are plenty of places you can stay there. You can couch surf there, you can do Airbnb, you can go to a small little guest house. There are other options that exist beyond the kind of standard way to do it, and there's no reason why you can't go to those places as well.
And speaking about a place like Barbados, and actually the same is true for where we are right now, Mallorca, I think it's really important to not accept the surface. In other words, Barbados is known for its beaches and palm trees and all of that, but it's so much more. And so is Mallorca. It's known for its beaches. People come here for the sun, but it's so much more. And it's the same thing for Paris or for London. They're always the things that a place is known for, which of course you want to see, and I would encourage that. But then there's the other side, which is also rich, and it's not as you won't necessarily find it in a tour guide or a book, but it's actually real life where people are living, and it's equally as exciting and interesting.
I was in Budapest with a friend in December, and we were asking, where should we go eat? We would ask people, and almost without fail, they would send us to an American pub or an Irish pub. And it took about 4 or 5 tries before we finally said, as you have suggested, where do you go? Don't tell me where you think I want to go. I want to, I want to eat goulash soup and all of that. Right. I don't want to eat an American hamburger or something.
Right.
And then I fully subscribe to your advice to sort of let the winds blow you where they will. Being in journalism and in news, we sort of, every second is sort of planned, and you have to hit your report at 6:01:30, not 6:01:29. And so much of our lives is planned down to the minute or the second. And so when I have some place that I'm going, for example, I'm going to Romania here in a couple of weeks. People find this hard to believe about me, but I actually don't even plan until maybe 24 hours in advance. I mean, I sort of Google online, top 10 places to see, and I put it on my phone on an offline map that I can access, and then I sort of say, okay, well, I'll just start here and wander and see where I go. And I really don't plan. I'm not a tour fan. I don't like tour groups. I just sort of want to wander and have the winds blow me where they will. Oh, this is an interesting street. I'll turn down there. This is an interesting church. Let me pop in there. And so I fully subscribe to that point of view, and I think that you discover so much that you wouldn't otherwise have found, whether it be a place to see or a conversation or a food. just to sort of let fate, deal its hand and wander. And I find that is really the beauty of travel, is that if you plan every minute and every second, you feel stressed, you need a vacation from your vacation, when you get back. And I think just sort of exploring where you are and being an adventurer is what travel is all about.
Absolutely. I fully believe in creating your own story, not traveling the path of someone else's story,
right?
But and I agree with you. We don't plan when we visit a new place. We do exactly what you just said. We do not, before we get there, we think, okay, what are the major things? We make a note of them, as you said, on an offline, map, and then we sort of wind our way around. We see those things, and then we also do our own thing. But I fully believe in people creating their own stories, and I think that far too often, I think that we just replay someone else's story instead of discovering what is interesting to us and for us. And I think a lot of that is because people, traveling feels you're out of your element. And so maybe it takes a little bit of effort to develop a different muscle, to do something which is not within your element, but as you said, which will leave you with amazing experiences, which are your own.
Yeah, in Morocco, we saw almost everyone we saw, well, not everyone, the majority of people were on tours because it's a difficult place to visit in many ways. And I think people think it's kind of easier to have someone just take you around and show you what to, everything and tell you everything. And I guess in a way it is easier, but I think you do cut yourself off from a lot of experiences. And we never really take tours. In fact, if in some of those tourist sites where they force you to take a tour, we often take it in a language you don't speak, so that we can just kind of be by ourselves and look around and not be distracted by someone telling us all the information that we could find out ourselves anyway by going on Google or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think there's been a tour that I've ever been on.
I think discovery is the
Yeah, I don't think there's been a tour that I've ever been on, and I try not to take them, where I didn't think, wait a minute, but I want to see more of this, or I don't care about that, or I wish we could stop here more.
Exactly.
It's too controlling.
Exactly.
Yeah, it definitely is too prescribed.
Yeah, we like to discover at our own pace, and you're right. There's always so many. The unexpected things are always the most satisfying. Like even if you enjoy something, if you've planned it too much, I find that it just kind of you're seeing what you've already seen a million times in the photos that you've looked at online, and it's like, okay, yeah, it does look nice, but it's so much nicer when you discover something that you hadn't even expected to see, and you're like, wow, that's beautiful.
Listeners, you can follow Genie Austin on her Instagram account, Photodisiac, Photodisiac, and you can follow Andrew Blackman at andrewblackman.net. Both of you, I am so glad that you were able to join us. Just a fascinating conversation, and I hope that you have inspired a lot of people listening today to take a leap of faith and explore the world. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us. We really enjoyed it.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Listeners, what do you think about living the nomadic life? Could you do it as a couple, as a family, by yourself? Let us know by rating this podcast, giving us a review, and sharing it on social media. We have guests every week talking about travel news and trends, so be sure to subscribe to our podcast. We'd sure appreciate your review. It helps bring more awareness to our journalism and original content. And if you have an idea for a future guest on our podcast, please reach out at voyagereport.com and let us know. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Mark Albert. Bon voyage.
You've been listening to the Voyage Report podcast. Get the scoop on travel at voyagereport.com.